evening to you, and welcome to a night session of Ask the Pastor Bible Study Live. My name is Steve Magua, and I hope that you're doing well. A happy weekend to you, and I thank God for you all for being here. Now, I'm sure if you're not living under a rock, or if you have not been too busy, you know that this week has been a week of great disappointment to millions, if not hundreds of thousands of Christians across the world. And that is because there had been a viral prophecy that was going on for a minute, and this viral prophecy had become very influential. Many people were expecting to be raptured this week. I hope you know that. September 23rd, 24th. I mean, it was all over the internet. It was on CNN. It was on the major news networks. The rapture was on up until the night of the 24th of September, when it became clear that was just a false prophecy, a false expectation, and therefore it was just another one of those such things that had happened. So, by the way, welcome Anthony Garisi. And of course, Anthony, I think that is a joke, what they are saying. I think that is a joke, because there's some people who are saying, now they are saying, when the Epstein list is released, we will be raptured. I think that is satire. I don't think they are serious about that. I think it's just somebody making fun of people. So now here is the deal. I want to highlight, and I want to share with you, that what happened in September 2025, of course, I'm sure that if you are a Christian of any knowledge of history, you know that this is not the first time that we have had a great disappointment. This is not the first time that we have had people sell their houses and cars and give up all their money because they believed passionately that Jesus was about to come back, right? So I'm going to take a number of times, and I'm going to bring to focus these movements that preach a false doctrine of the second coming, and by so doing, what are the effects? When people teach about the second coming and it is false, how do they recover? What do they do? Well, one such movement that we are going to be looking at tonight is the Seventh-day Adventists. Did you know that the Seventh-day Adventists, one of the biggest denominations today, I think it boasts of having at least 22 million adherents today. But did you know that the Seventh-day Adventist was started based on a false rapture prophecy? Did you know this? Yes. So don't take it for granted what you just saw happening on September 23rd. It is very possible that a new denomination may be formed out of the Brother Joshua movement of September 23rd. It has happened before. In fact, today I'm going to be highlighting how the Seventh-day Adventists came to be, and I am going to speak from their perspective. So I have a website here that is called Ask an Adventist Friend. So this is a website that is actually curated, that is actually designed and stewarded by Seventh-day Adventists. So it's called Ask an Adventist Friend. And this is the history of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So go with me as we look into it. The Seventh-day Adventist Church was founded on May the 21st, 1863 in Battle Creek, Michigan. And it began as a grassroots movement in the 19th century, 1863, following the Second Great Awakening. Early founders of this movement, let me see if I can increase this so that you guys are able to see it. Early founders of the movement named it the Seventh-day Adventist Church to highlight their beliefs in the seventh-day Sabbath and the second advent, or the second coming of Jesus. Okay, so the Seventh-day Adventist, the word Advent is actually the second coming. So the Seventh-day Adventist was formed in 1863 based upon a prediction that the second coming was to happen up at around that time. Now, this is a little bit more information here. Once the church started to gain momentum after 1863, its headquarters were moved from Battle Creek, Michigan to Silver Spring, Maryland in 1989. Today, the Adventist Church is a worldwide Protestant Christian denomination with nearly 22 million baptized members. It has churches of all sizes, as well as schools, hospitals, media, and publishing houses, relief agencies, and various service ministries around the world. And I have to say, they do some pretty good work. They do some pretty good work. I've been around Seventh-day Adventists. I have friends who are Seventh-day Adventists. I've gone to Seventh-day Adventist hospitals. I used to live in Maryland, so I have been to their center in Maryland. They are a pretty big organization. But I want you to understand, they started off from a false rapture doctrine. Now watch this. I'm going to continue a little bit further and give you some more information. So in other words, what was happening this week with the rapture movement, this has been happening a long time, and it can continue to grow into something. Now watch this. So how did we get to this point? The Seventh-day Adventists ask. Seventh-day Adventists has a rich history of sincere Bible study and collective ambition to share the profound hope that is only found in Jesus Christ. To give you an overview of its origins and growth, we will highlight the major milestones. The Advent movement that paved the way, Ellen White and the growth of Seventh-day Adventism, mission work and global expansion, and our official statement of belief. To get a full picture of how Adventism, the Adventist Church began, we have to go back a few decades before it started. I appreciate the fact that they are very honest. Now watch what they say. Before there was Seventh-day Adventism, there was the Second Great Awakening and the Millerite movement. Now you need to understand that the Second Great Awakening is a revival movement that actually happened in the 1700s, in the time of John Wesley, in the time of Jonathan Edwards, in the time of I forget other names, but anyways, the 1700s. So in the 1800s, particularly about 1830, there was a man, and this man was named William Miller. So the Millerite movement was started by William Miller. William Miller was a Baptist preacher. He was a farmer, and he was a military veteran. And eventually he became a preacher. Miller wanted to deepen his understanding of the Bible after he returned from the war. And he was intrigued by what he found in the prophetic passages in the book of Daniel. Though William Miller never became a Seventh-day Adventist himself, his study of the Bible encouraged others to do the same, including those who later started the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Here is how. A close call during the 1812 war turned Miller's thoughts towards the fragility of life. Convinced that he should have died, but that he didn't, he became interested in God and the Bible, and he searched for new purpose. As he read through the book of Daniel and compared its prophetic passages to those in Revelation, he determined that the second coming of Jesus Christ would be physical, it would be literal, and that it might happen much sooner than many had thought. So notice that as Miller, a Baptist preacher, is studying the book of Daniel and studying the book of Revelation, he comes to a conclusion that the second coming was going to be a physical, literal event. Why do they say that? Because you see, by this time, because this is after the Great Reformation of the 16th century, the amillennial movement and the post-millennial movement had some ideas that maybe the second coming was not going to be a physical, literal event. So Miller was kind of backing the trend of what scholars were coming up with on what was to be expected about the second coming in the future. So he said it was going to be a physical, literal event that was going to happen much sooner than most Christians expected. This is in the 1830s. Not wanting to lead many people astray. Oops, sorry. Excuse me. I have to go back there. For some reason, I think I clicked on something here. So here it is. So not wanting to lead many people astray, this is what Miller did. So this is William Miller. He is the guy who started the Seventh-day Adventists. At least he was the original guy. So anyway, it says, not wanting to lead anyone astray, Miller didn't speak up right away. So he didn't speak up around 1830 when he began to discover what he felt was the truth. He studied for 9 more years, from 1830 to about 1839, until he could no longer stifle his conviction. It was time to tell the world. It was time to tell the world. Now, Miller's study of the 2300-day prophecy in Daniel chapter 8 and Daniel chapter 9, the 70 weeks prophecy, convinced him that the second advent, that is the second coming of Christ, was right around the corner, and it would take place between spring of 1843 and spring of 1844. So William Miller made a prediction. He made a prophecy, but his prophecy was not as specific as Brother Joshua just did a few days ago. So instead of giving a specific date, he gave a year. He said it's going to happen between 1843 spring, March, until 1844 March. So somewhere in there, he said the second coming was going to take place. So please understand that the Millerite movement was predicting the second coming. Now, his prediction gained traction from 1839 all the way up to 1843. And the movement grew in size. And it came up to a point where there were about 1 million people in 1843 that believed that Jesus was about to come back in 1843 or 1844. And there was much enthusiasm. Followers mostly came from existing churches. They were Methodists, they were Presbyterians, they were Episcopalians. Their belief in the soon coming of Christ was radical at the time because most churches believed in post-millennialism, the idea that Jesus would return to the earth after 1,000 years of peace. So the Great Awakening, had produced post-millennialism. And so the post-millennialists were believing that first and foremost, they had to evangelize the world. Then after the whole world was evangelized, there would be 1,000 years of peace, of growth in the Christian movement. And then at the end of the 1,000 years, Christ would return. So the post-millennialists in the 1700s were saying, oh, Christ is not coming soon. There's like 1,000 years at least in our future, maybe more. So when Miller began to say that Jesus was coming back in 1843, this was totally against the trend of what was being preached commonly in churches. So now let me make a point here. You know, people today think that the church has always thought that Jesus is coming soon. Jesus is coming soon. That has not always been the common consensus across the church. At the time when the Millerite movement emerged in the 1830s, between 1830 and 1839, there was no urgency about the second coming in the church. There was no such urgency. So the Millerite movement injected the urgency that we see today. So anyway, their belief in the soon coming of Christ was radical at the time because most churches believed in post-millennialism, the idea that Jesus would return to the earth after 1,000 years of peace. As a result, many of the existing churches removed Miller's followers from their membership. So they came together and they called themselves the Millerites. And Miller himself was kicked out of the Baptist denomination. So, and they excitedly anticipated the predicted date. Remember, March 1843 to March 1844. As the morning, and by the way, later on, that date passed, the March 1844 passed, so they made a new prediction for October the 22nd. So as the morning of October 22nd, 1844 approached, each believer had been preparing for the second coming. They spent time in prayer. They sold their properties. And some even left their farm harvests sitting in the fields. They did not harvest their field that year. They eagerly awaited the first sight of Jesus and a host of angels. Many probably stayed up late, waiting for the clock to strike midnight, thinking Jesus might make his appearance at the very last second. Do you know that there was a 13-hour broadcast on September 23rd to the 24th that was hosted by some guys, and they hosted Prophet Joshua, the guy who was saying Jesus is coming back on the 23rd, 24th, and they stayed up for 13 hours waiting for Jesus to appear on the internet, on YouTube. And it was only towards the end that they really began to lose hope. And they began to ask, hey, what is happening? And then finally, they shut down the live stream because Jesus, of course, failed to return. Excuse me. Jesus failed to return when they said he would return. So what we saw a few days ago is not new at all. But what the people did in 1844 is very unique. Look at what they did. So Jesus did not make it. Jesus did not appear in 1844. So what did they do? So it says here, the great disappointment. But midnight passed. The hours had slowly ticked by, but nothing happened. That's why October 22nd, 1844 has since been known as the day of the great disappointment. It is true that the Bible gives us incredible insight about the future of humanity, but when we are tempted to go overboard in trying to figure out everything, right down to the last detail, Scripture includes some warnings, even specifically about predicting the exact date and time of the second coming. But of that hour, of that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. Matthew 24. Therefore, you also be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. Matthew 24, 44. These truths didn't stand out to the Millerites, or they interpreted them differently. But that changed after the great disappointment. With time, many disheartened, disillusioned, disappointed, but persevering Christians recognize where they went wrong. Those who are committed to diving back into Scripture found a way forward. So now they will talk about carrying on with the faith. After the disappointment, many Millerites gave up their newfound hope and returned to their normal lives, the way that many people are going to do since this rapture just passed. Some felt they had been wrong about the October 22nd date, including William Miller. He continued to believe Jesus would return soon, but he didn't set a date. Others felt that the October 22nd date had been correct, but that the event was wrong. They dove into their Bibles, wondering where they went wrong. And they found answers. They found answers. Now, we are going to soon read the scriptures in Daniel 8, and we are going to figure out the answers that they say they found. Are those answers from the text that they claim explains what happened in 1844, or are they made up answers? We shall soon find out. Because remember, with the Bible, you can make the Bible say whatever you want it to say, or you can just read the text and let the text say what it is saying without any addition. So anyway, so they found answers. They learned from somebody, that the Bible passage in Daniel 8:14 didn't point to the second coming of Jesus. Good point. But that it pointed to his ministry in the Holy of Holies, the most holy place of the sanctuary in heaven. It also marked the beginning of what they called the investigative judgment for all professed believers throughout history. So the judgment started in 1844, they say. 1844. So Jesus came into the world way back when, 1800 years before. He died in 30 AD. He resurrected in 30 AD. He went back to heaven, but he had not entered the Holy of Holies until 1844. Jesus had been outside heaven waiting for 1800 years. And then in 1844, he was allowed to enter heaven finally, the Holy of Holies, to begin the judgment. This is what the Seventh-day Adventist is based upon. So their great disappointment, instead of actually going back to the drawing boards and clearing the board and saying, let's start from zero, they said, nope, we ain't going back to zero. We will begin at 1844. We will make 1844 into whatever we want to make it into, and then we'll go forward. So anyway, while they maintained their belief in Jesus' soon return, they also embraced the new truth about the heavenly sanctuary. Then an influential Millerite, follower of Miller, named Joseph Bates, found out that according to the Bible, the Sabbath is on Saturday. Whoa, what a discovery. For the first time in 1844, a Christian finds out the Sabbath is supposed to be on a Saturday, not on a Sunday. My goodness. So he learned this from Seventh-day Baptists who had been in the United States since the 1600s. So it was not a new discovery anyway. And after much Bible study, he was convinced and went on to share the truth by writing a booklet about it. He gave the booklet to many fellow Millerites, including James White and Ellen White, the wife of James White. Now you will notice that Ellen White is in a link because she becomes the leader. Soon, they too, they used to be Millerites, by the way. Ellen White and James White used to be Millerites. They used to believe in the 1844 second coming. Soon, they too were convinced of the biblical seventh-day Sabbath. Later, these three would become some of the leading founders of Seventh-day Adventism. As they shared the Sabbath truth among the scattered groups, those who accepted it came to be known as Sabbatarian Adventists. Further Bible studies during a series of 20 meetings from 1848 to 1850 led to the discovery of other biblical teachings like A, the dead are asleep during the second coming, or until the second coming rather. This is called the soul sleep doctrine. In the last days, Christians will be called back to biblical truth, and a small group of believers, Seventh-day Adventists, will answer the call, Revelation 14. the three angels. Many will display the prophetic gift in the last days and proclaim the good news about Jesus to the world. Joel chapter 2. So they say Joel chapter 2 and Acts chapter 2 are in 1844, not 30 AD. These beliefs were quite different. By the way, they say that Ellen G. White was displaying this prophetic gift in 1844, between 1844 and 1863. These beliefs were quite different from what other Christian denominations taught at the time. So if you're a Pentecostal, just understand that the Seventh-day Adventists believed in prophecy long before you. But Adventists believe in what we call present truth. So if you're a Pentecostal, if you're a charismatic, this will not be very strange to you. Present truth. Truths from the Bible that are relevant to a specific time and context and may not have been known in earlier times. So they have revealed revelations that are new. Nobody knew them before until 1844 to 1863. And since I keep going back up there, I don't know why. I do apologize. We are going to get back here. So here is where we are. And since this new understanding of the Bible often set the members of the movements at odds with other churches, they ended up forming their own denomination in 1860 with the name Seventh-day Adventists. 3 years later, in 1863, the denomination was officially organized as the General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. The church started out in North America with its headquarters in Battle Creek, Michigan in 1863, but soon it grew beyond North America and an elaborate church structure developed. And now they will go into how that developed. Ellen G. White, there is a picture of her. Two of the most influential founders of the Seventh-day Adventists were Ellen G. White and her husband, James White. She is recognized by the church as one who exhibited the prophetic gift, such as Romans 12:6, 1 Corinthians 14, although she did not claim the title of prophet for herself. She helped shape the early years of Adventism by writing and speaking the things that God was revealing to her, impressing upon her heart. Through guidance and wisdom from the Holy Spirit, Ellen G. White spearheaded several initiatives in the Adventist church, like the publishing work, beginning the Present Truth periodical that started in Rochester, New York, under the leadership of James White in 1849, the health work, beginning the Battle Creek Sanitarium under the leadership of John Harvey Kellogg. By the way, this is where you get the Kellogg's cereal. If you know Kellogg's, they make cereals. That's where that started. So they have done some extraordinary work. The Adventist educational system, beginning with Goodloe Harper Bell School in Battle Creek in 1872, inspired by the Great Commission in Matthew 28, Adventists grew from these humble beginnings to the worldwide denomination that we know today. But to get to the point, they engaged in widespread evangelistic initiatives and overseas missions. Now, you can read more. I attached this article from an Adventist source. So nothing that I'm reading is from their enemies or from their detractors. It's their literature. That's how they started. So they are very honest about it, I think. We have to give them that. They are very honest that they started from a false understanding of the second coming, but they doubled down on that false understanding of the second coming, and they formed a denomination out of that. And the denomination today is founded on the fact that they say that in their understanding, Jesus entered the Holy of Holies in 1844 to begin the final judgment that is going on, that has been going on for the last almost 200 years. It's been more than 150 years, I think, 165 years now. Jesus has been doing a judgment for 165 years or so. I'm just kind of guessing the number there. And that Jesus is going to come soon. Now, I'm not going to take too much time. What I want us to examine is this. They say the whole denomination is based on Daniel 8:14. So we are going to look at Daniel 8:14. If Daniel 8:14 gives us any indication that 1844 is the point at which Jesus enters into heaven, then I will become a Seventh-day Adventist from tonight. And I urge you to become a Seventh-day Adventist from tonight if that is what we find in Daniel 8. Sami Osh, you have approached me with this question many times. Finally, I have yielded and I'm going to address it. So let's go to Daniel chapter 8. Verse number 14 says this. So I'm going to go first to verse number 14. Let's see if verse number 14 says anything about Jesus. If it says anything about Jesus entering the heavenly sanctuary or anything like that. If we don't find that, then we will go back and find out the context of Daniel 8:14. So in Daniel 8:14, the Bible says, and he said to me, for 2300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary shall be restored to its rightful state. So that's Daniel 8:14. He said he said to me, for 2300 mornings, and then the sanctuary, the temple, shall be restored to its rightful place. Now, is there any one of you that as I read that scripture, you're like, wow, that's it right there. Jesus enters the sanctuary in 1844 in heaven to begin the investigative judgment. How many of you saw that in that text? I bet none of you. In fact, before 1844, not a single Christian, not a single scholar had ever said anything concerning that scripture like that. Ever. So therefore, why did they decide that this scripture is talking about 1844? Because of the great disappointment. Because they had to pivot. In other words, right now, we have millions of Christians who sold, probably not millions of Christians sold their properties, but we have millions of Christians who expected Jesus to come 2 days ago, September 23, 24. What are they going to do now? What are they going to say? What is Brother Joshua going to say? What are all those people that were making rapture talk? What are they going to say? They have to pivot. They have to say something. Otherwise, they look like bumpkins. They look like stupid people. They have to say something. So there's usually two ways. The most humble way is to come out like Miller. Miller is the one who had first predicted that 1843 to 1844, Jesus is going to come in there. When it failed, he went back, he recalculated, he said 1844, October. When that failed, Miller gave up. Miller said, you know what? I'm just going to wait for Jesus without any more dates. I'm sorry. He apologized. That's the most humble way. You admit that you are wrong. The proudest way is to say, no, I'm gonna spin this a different way. I'm gonna spin this a different way. So the failed Millerites, the disappointed Millerites, came up with a new way to describe why they were disappointed. Why did Jesus not come when they said he was going to come? So they took this verse and they said, this is when Jesus enters heaven. Well, in order to figure if they have any foundation, we just have to read the whole passage. So we're going to go back to verse number 1. We're going to read 14 verses of the Bible. Can you stand to read 14 verses of the Bible with me tonight? Please. So Daniel's vision of the ram and goat. This is what the vision is about. So notice that the vision is about a ram and a goat. This is what the vision is about. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared to me, Daniel. After that which appeared to me at first in Daniel 9, that is, and Daniel 7 before. And I saw in the vision, and what I saw, I was in Susa, the citadel, which is in the province of Elam. And I saw in the vision that I was at the Ulai Canal. I raised my eyes and saw, behold, a ram standing on the bank of the canal. It had 2 horns, and both horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher one came up last. So we have a ram. It has 2 horns. One of the horns is higher than the other, but the higher one comes up later. I saw the ram charging westward. So it's coming from east going west. East going west. From Persia, from Ulam, from the Euphrates, is going westward towards Europe. And it was going also northward, and it was also going southward. No beast could stand before him, and there was none who could rescue from his power. He did as he pleased, and he became great. As I was considering, behold, a male goat came from the west. So the ram is going from east to west. The male goat is coming from the west, is going east. So a male goat came from the west across the face of the whole earth without touching the ground. So it was moving fast. And the goat had a conspicuous horn between his eyes. Just one horn. He came to the ram with the 2 horns, which I had seen standing on the bank of the canal. And he ran at him in his powerful wrath. I saw him come close to the ram, and he was enraged against him, and he struck the ram, and he broke his 2 horns. And the ram had no power to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground and trampled on him. And there was no one who could rescue the ram from the power of the goat. The goat was really the greatest of all time, the goat. Then the goat became exceedingly great, but when he was strong, the great horn was broken. And instead of it, there came up 4 conspicuous horns toward the 4 winds of heaven. Out of them, out of the 4 conspicuous horns, came a little horn. Out of the 4 conspicuous horns came a little horn, which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and towards the glorious land. It grew great even to the host of heaven. And some of the hosts and some of the stars, it drew down to the ground and trampled on them. So notice the trampling is like what had happened between the goat and the ram. Verse 11, it became great, this little horn that came out of the 4, even as great as the prince of the host. And the regular burnt offering was taken away from him, from the prince of the host. And the place of his sanctuary was overthrown. And a host will be given to it together with a regular burnt offering because of transgression. And it will throw truth to the ground, and it will act and prosper. Then I heard a holy one speaking and another holy one say to the one who spoke, for how long is the vision concerning the regular burnt offering? The transgression that makes desolate, and the giving over of the sanctuary, and the host to be trampled underfoot. So notice the question, how long is the vision? How long is the regular burnt offering taken away? And the transgression that makes desolate, and the giving over of the sanctuary to this little horn, and the host, how long does all this happen? And he said to me, for 2,300 evenings and mornings. For 2,300 evenings and mornings. So please notice the question. Let's actually go a little bit back forth. So he says, this horn, the 4th one, the 5th one, and it became great. It comes out of the 4. It becomes great, even as great as the prince of the host, and the regular burnt offering was taken away. So no more burnt offerings. No more burnt offerings. And not only the burnt offerings are taken away, the place of the sanctuary is overthrown. The place of the sanctuary is now overthrown, it can no longer do the work. And a host will be given over to this little horn, together with the regular burnt offering, because of transgression. So I gotta ask you, at this point, even before we are told what this means, because we are going to be told what this means, where is this happening? Where is the regular burnt offering being taken away from? Where is transgression happening? Is it happening on the earth, or is it happening in heaven? Is it possible that in heaven there are regular burnt offerings going on? Is it possible that transgression happens in heaven so that no more sacrifices happen in heaven anymore? Whenever this is, does that even make sense to you? No, the plain scripture, whatever it's talking about, is there's animal sacrifices that continue in the Jerusalem temple, but we are told that a particular horn, a leader, comes and he takes Jerusalem over. He stops the animal sacrifices. He tramples over the people of Jerusalem, and he stops the regular burnt offerings. Okay? And then, so the question is asked, how long will this continue? This issue of the regular burnt offering not continuing. How long will the regular burnt offerings be stopped? This is verse number 13. For how long is the vision concerning the regular burnt offering, the transgression that makes desolate, and the giving over of the sanctuary, the temple, and the host to be trampled, the host, the multitude to be trampled underfoot? How long will this last? And he said to me, for 2,300 evenings and mornings. For 2,300 evenings and mornings. Then the sanctuary shall be restored to its rightful place. So in other words, animal sacrifices will be restored. When I, Daniel, had seen the vision, I sought to understand it. Now, here is a very, very, very critical point of this vision. Now, if the vision had ended there and no other explanation is given, then you are given a leash to where you can say, well, let me give my opinion. Let me give my interpretation. But Daniel doesn't end the account there. He says, when I, Daniel, had seen the vision, I sought to understand it. Okay, tell us what you understood, Daniel. And behold, there stood before me one having the appearance of a man. So I don't know if he's a man, but he appears like a man in the vision. I heard a man's voice between the banks of the Ulai, and it called, Gabriel, make this man understand the vision. So Gabriel, the angel, the archangel, if you like, or at least one of the angels of the Lord, appears before Daniel to give him understanding. So he came near where I stood. And when he came, I was frightened and fell on my face. So this cannot be a natural man. But he said to me, understand, O son of man, understand that the vision is for the time of the end. The vision is for the time of the end. Notice, dear friends, the vision is not about the end of time. The vision is not about the end of time. The vision is about the time of the end. Two different concepts. The time of the end is the time when something of note ends. The end of time is when time is normal. This one is not talking about time is normal. It's just talking about the end of something significant. What? We don't know yet. So we have to continue. So he says, and when he had spoken to me, I fell into a deep sleep, a tardima, with my face to the ground, and he touched me, and he made me stand up. He said, behold, I will come back to that, Anthony. It will become so clear to you, you will not even wonder. It's so simple. He said to me, so listen to the angel first. Don't wonder. Don't try to figure it out. Let the angel explain. Let Gabriel explain. Is that fair enough? Let Gabriel explain. So he said to me, Gabriel said to me, I will make known to you, Daniel, what shall be to the latter end of the indignation. For it refers to the appointed time of the end. As for the ram that you saw with the two horns, so please, if you are taking notes, take notes now. This is critical. We are not going to add anything. I'm not even going to try and break this down. It's going to be so clear to you, you're going to be surprised that you even worried about it or wondered about it. As for the ram that began the vision, remember, okay, just in case somebody just came in, here's the vision in summary. At the beginning of the vision, Daniel sees a ram with two horns. One of the horns is bigger than the other. So I want you to imagine these are the horns. So this is one, the shorter one. This is the longer one. It's going from east to west. But as he's watching, another animal comes up, a goat. The goat has a very big horn. The goat is moving. It's not even touching the ground. It's moving speedily. And it comes and it smashes the two horns of the ram, breaks them. The ram crashes down, the goat tramples it, and then the ram continues to move and its horn continues to grow. But when it becomes great, the horn of the goat, not the ram, the horn of the goat is broken. And in its place, 4 horns come up. And in the place of the 4, one final one comes up. And it grows and it becomes big. And this is the one that grows until it actually topples the host of heaven. It topples the host of heaven, tramples them on the ground. It desolates the temple and it stops the animal sacrifices. It stops the daily burnt sacrifices. So that's the vision. So now you're going to be told what it means. So it says, as for the ram that you saw with 2 horns, the one that began, these are the kings of Media and Persia, the Medo-Persian kingdom. So it places this now in a historical context. So it tells you this is the kingdom that came right after Babylon. This is the kingdom of Cyrus and Darius. So Cyrus was a Persian king. Darius was a Median king. They formed an alliance so that they could defeat Babylon. So this is the Medo-Persian Empire. That's where we are historically. Okay, let's continue. The he-goat and the goat is the king of Greece. So remember, Greece is the empire that defeated the Medo-Persian Empire. And the goat is King Alexander. Alexander the Great. That's what it's called. There are movies about him. There are books about him. That's how great he was. So the goat is the king of Greece. And the great horn between his eyes is the first king, Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great was the son of the king of Macedonia. So if you've ever heard about Macedonia, Macedonia is a very small country today. And back in the times of Persia, Macedonia was a regional, just a small country kingdom. But the son of the king of Macedonia, he was called Philip. The king of Macedonia was called Philip. His son, Alexander, had global, or at least very huge ambitions. When his father died, he became king. He went to war. He built an army. He went to war and he conquered Persia. He conquered Medo-Persia. So that's where we are historically. So as for the horn that was broken, in place of which 4 arose, 4 kingdoms shall arise out of his nation, out of the Greek empire, but not with his power. So in other words, this is Ptolemy, the Seleucids, Lysimachus, and can I remember the other one? Anyway, there are 4 kingdoms. When Alexander died, he was only 33. He had a little son, and because the little son had just been born, and they knew that the son was going to be killed by these 4 generals, the nurse of Alexander fled with Alexander's son. He never became king. So the 4 generals of Alexander who had conquered the world from the Indus River to the Nile, they were left in charge. So they divided up the Greek kingdom into four. They divided up the Greek kingdom into four. Okay. Now, and at the latter end of their kingdom, the Greek kingdom, when the transgressors, the Israelites that is, have reached their limit, the transgressors are the Israelites, by the way. The Israelites are the ones who had been sent away into captivity. So when the transgressors have reached their limit, a king, so at the latter end of the four Greek generals. So this, we are still in the kingdom of Greece. Remember, in the history of the kingdoms, there are four kingdoms. There's Babylon, so Daniel 2. There's Babylon, that's the kingdom of gold, the lion. There's Medo-Persia, the kingdom of silver, the bear. There's Greece, which is the leopard with four heads and four wings, if you go by Daniel 2 and Daniel 7. Then there is the fourth kingdom, the one that comes after Greece. The fourth kingdom has 10 horns, 7 heads and 10 horns, if you go by Revelation chapter 13. But now, this story tells you we are at the third kingdom. We are at Greece. So towards the latter end of Greece, towards the latter end of their kingdom, when the transgressors, the Jews are the transgressors, the breakers of the covenant, have reached their limit, a king of bold face, one who understands riddles, shall arise. So this is a king within the Grecian system. We are not yet into the last four, into the last fourth kingdom. So his power shall be great, but not by his own power. And he shall cause fearful destruction. And he shall succeed in what he does, and he shall destroy mighty men and the people who are the saints. Now, you need to understand this. The saints are also the transgressors. The saints are the Jews. So because the Jews have always had righteous people and righteous people. So that's why they are called the transgressors, and they are also called the saints. So the last king of Greece, is going to conquer Jerusalem. The last king of Greece is the last king of the third kingdom. Ben Gaido asks, so the transgressors are in captivity already? No, actually, by the time of this third, of this horn, they are no longer in captivity. Remember, they went back from the captivity in the time of the Medo-Persian. King Cyrus, King Darius, and King Artaxerxes had released the captives to go back. So the captives had gone back long before this king of Greece. And they had established themselves back in Jerusalem by the order of Cyrus, Darius, and Artaxerxes. So they are back in their country. So that now, that's why when you read verse number 24, it tells you that this one shall cause fearful destruction all over the Middle East and Europe, and he shall destroy mighty men, and he shall destroy the people who are the saints. He will come to war against the Jews. So this is happening, just in case you want a date, a historical date. This is Antiochus Epiphanes, that's his name, and he is ruling from about 170 BC. 170 BC. So remember, Nebuchadnezzar is at 587 BC. King Cyrus is somewhere around 539 to 600 BC. Actually, 600 BC. Sorry, 400. So King Cyrus is closer to 400. Maybe 480. Artaxerxes is at 457 BC. Okay, so this fifth horn that comes out of the Grecian kingdom is at around 170 BC. Right now, I'm just giving you, surface dates. You can always go back to Google and you can find the exact dates. When did these kings rule? So we are at 170 BC, 170 years before the time of Christ. The temple has already been rebuilt by Ezra and Nehemiah. So the temple is working fine. So this guy comes to war against Israel. Verse 24. By his cunning, Antiochus Epiphanes, he shall make deceit prosper under his hand. And in his own mind, he shall become great. Without warning, he shall destroy many. And he shall even rise up against the prince of princes. That's the high priest. It's unfortunate that the English translation capitalizes this, because then it seems as if he's coming against Jesus. No, the prince of princes is the high priest of Israel. He is the prince of the 12 princes of Israel. There are 12 princes in Israel. But the high priest, which is existing in 170 BC, 167 BC, thereabouts, is the prince of the Israelite princes. So it's not Jesus. And he, so this is just a bias of translation. So, and he shall be broken, the high priest, but by no human hand. So this battle actually happened in 167 BC. That's when Antiochus Epiphanes had gone to war in Egypt. And as he was coming back from Egypt, I believe he was defeated in Egypt. He was in a very foul mood. When you come from Egypt and you're going back to Greece, you have to go through Israel. So in order to vent his rage of defeat, he decided to punish the people of Jerusalem, which was within his general realm. So he attacks Jerusalem, he destroys Jerusalem, he slaughters a pig inside the temple. So all of this is recorded in the book of Maccabees. And then he kills many people, and then he says, from now on, no more circumcision, no more animal sacrifices, no more worshiping Yahweh. I'm done, because of his defeat in Egypt. And then he goes home after establishing that. So because of this great destruction and the abomination that he causes at the temple, the sacrifices stop, because a pig has been slaughtered in the temple. See, this is why it's important to know history. So now, Antiochus has gone back home. There's no more sacrifices going on in Jerusalem. There is an official that has been set up in Jerusalem to make sure that the Jews sacrifice to the gods of Greece. Then a man arises. His name is Judah Maccabee. He is from the tribe of Judah. He is not a priest. He's just a Judean. He says, are we going to allow this to stand? Are we going to allow these Greeks to completely stop circumcision, to completely stop the practices of the Jews? So he has 5 sons. So he tells his 5 sons, I would rather die. If you boys want to live, that's okay, but I'm going to die. I'm going to go to Jerusalem and I'm going to stop it. So his sons say, hey, Dad, we got you. So they take up their swords, they go down to Jerusalem, they go to the temple, they kill the official of Antiochus Epiphanes, they kill all his officials, and they say, we will fight until we die, or we will restore the Jewish practices of the Bible. So obviously, all the officials of Antiochus are dead. So a report is sent to Greece. Jerusalem, which you left in charge of your officials, is back in the hands of the Jews. They have killed all your officials. So Antiochus Epiphanes forms an army and makes his way back down to Jerusalem. But Judah Maccabee and his 5 sons, they are called the Maccabees now. The Maccabees is actually not their name. Okay, this is a nickname that they are given later, because the word Maccabee means iron hammer. So Judah Maccabee, once he hears that Antiochus is coming with a great force, he reasons with his sons. He says, listen, if we wait for these people here in Jerusalem for open warfare, they will crush us. So instead of waiting for them, so I'm giving a summary. You can go and read in the book of Maccabees. Instead of waiting for them, let's go meet them before they get here, and let's attack them using guerrilla warfare. So Judah Maccabee and his sons and a band of other people that have joined them, they go and they attack Antiochus Epiphanes in the hills, in the forests, before they ever get to Jerusalem. And they defeat them. And they defeat them so conclusively that Antiochus has to flee. And he has to go and reform his army. So more Jews, when they hear of the victory of Judah Maccabee and his sons, they join the rebel forces. And it tells them, we will never fight in open warfare. We will always fight them using guerrilla warfare, terrorism. Hamas. The Jews were terrorists. And what they did, for the next 3.5 years, the battle rages between the forces of Antiochus Epiphanes and the forces of Judah Maccabee. From 167 BC, the war is fought for exactly 3 years and a little bit longer. We are coming to the 2300 mornings in a moment. At the end of 3 years and almost a half, Antiochus Epiphanes is demoralized. His army is demoralized. He gives up. In any case, the Parthians and the Romans, which are much bigger forces, begin to attack Greece. So Antiochus realizes this small fry called Jerusalem is not worth it, because he's about to lose a greater battle against the Romans and the Parthians. So he gives up Jerusalem. He goes back. He goes to fight the Romans. At that moment, when he gives up, Judah Maccabee is already dead by this time. His son Jonathan is now the leader of the pack. So they restore Jerusalem, and Jonathan is crowned as the king of Israel, and he's also the high priest. So he is the first kingly royal priest actually in the history of Israel, because even David was not a royal priest. David was not a high priest. So Jonathan is the first royal high priest. He's a king and a high priest at the same time. And so they spend 8 days cleansing the temple. And once they cleanse the temple, and they say miraculously the oil never runs out while they're cleansing the temple, at the end of 8 days, the temple is cleansed, and they rededicate the temple, and they restart the animal sacrifices that had stopped when Antiochus had slaughtered a pig inside the sanctuary. And so this is called the Feast of Rededication, or Hanukkah, which Jesus in John chapter 2 went to celebrate in Jerusalem in December. It's always celebrated December 25th. So now that you know that history, now let's read. So we read. So that's the history. That's the actual history. So Antiochus Epiphanes shall rise against the high priest, the prince of princes, and the high priest shall be broken, but by no human hand. The vision of the evenings and mornings. Notice here the vision is of evenings and mornings that has been told is true. But seal the vision, Daniel, seal the vision. Where are we at? There we are. So seal the vision, for it refers to many days from now. So remember, Daniel is 600 BC. That's when Daniel is alive. Antiochus Epiphanes is 170 BC, 500 years later, maybe 400 at the most. So, and I, Daniel, he says, and I, Daniel, was overcome and lay sick for some days. Then I rose up and went about the king's business, and I was appalled at the vision, and I did not understand it. Okay. So this is the vision that Miller, well, not the Miller actually. Yeah, Miller took this vision and he twisted this vision to be about the second coming in 1844. So what he did, I'll first of all give you what Miller did, and then I'll show you what you're supposed to do with this vision plainly. So what Miller did in 1830, he started to think, when you look at Daniel 9, where there is the prophecy of the 70 weeks, each day is a year in the 70 weeks prophecy, right? It tells you that it's a 70 weeks prophecy. So it's 490 years. So he reasoned, I'm going to do the same in the 2300 year prophecy, 2300 days prophecy. I'm going to do the same. So therefore, I'm going to say there's 2300 days, therefore there's 2300 years. And so, because they already knew that Jesus was baptized in 27 AD, what Miller did, that this text does not say, he took back the prophecy, the 2300 prophecy, to 457 BC, when Artaxerxes released the Jews. And so he counted 2300 years from 457 BC. You see, 2300 years from 457 BC brings you to 1844. So that's how they ended up with 1844 as the second coming. The text in this prophecy gives you no such idea. The text in this prophecy tells you in verse number 13 that this is about when the animal sacrifices are stopped and when they are restored. Okay, so look at this. So this text is not like Daniel chapter 9, because Daniel chapter 9 tells you from the time that they give for the temple to be rebuilt. So verse 11, it became great, even as great as the prince of the host, and the regular burnt offering was taken away from him, and the place of the sanctuary was overthrown, and a host will be given over to it together with the regular burnt offerings because of the transgression. And it will throw truth to the ground, and it will act and prosper. Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to the one who spoke, for how long? For how long will the regular burnt offering be taken away? And he says, so let me read all those things. How long, from the time the regular burnt offering is taken away, how long from the time the transgression that makes desolate towards the end of it, how long from the giving over of the sanctuary to this horn, and the host is trampled, how long shall it all take? And he said, for 2300 evenings and mornings. 2300 evenings and mornings. So take your pen and paper. Understand the Jewish sacrificial system. In the Jewish sacrificial system, you sacrifice in the morning and in the evening. That's 2 times. Tomorrow, you sacrifice 2 times, in the morning and in the evening. So if you do 2300 times, it means you've sacrificed twice a day, not for 2300 days, but you sacrifice twice a day for 1150 days. So each morning and each evening counts for itself. 2300 mornings and evenings. So it's actually 1150 24-hour days. Rather, it is 2300 individual sacrifices that will be missed. From the time the sacrifices stop to the time the sacrifices are restored, it will be 2300 sacrifices that are not done. So if you take 1150, I don't know if I have a calculator here in my, let me see, I might have a calculator. I'm gonna display calculator. Yes. Bring up a calculator. So I'm gonna put up a calculator on this screen here where you guys can see, so that I can help you to calculate. I can help you to see. So hopefully it's visible enough. So you have 2300 evenings and mornings. But since you want to know exactly how long this is, you have to take each day has 2 sacrifices. So you divide 2300 by 2. And what you will get is 1150 days. You take 1150 days and you divide it by 360, because that's the Jewish calendar. And what you get is 3 years, 3.19 years. So in other words, he's saying from the time that the sacrifices are stopped in the days of the latter end of the Greek kings, Antiochus Epiphanes, to the time that the temple is restored, it will take 3 years, 0.19. 3 years, 0.19 of an year. 0.19 of an year. So remember, 3.5 years is 3 and 3.5. So it's 3 years and maybe, I don't know, maybe 3 months. When you take this number and you go to the book of Maccabees and you go, when did you guys stop the sacrifices? And when did you guys restore them on Hanukkah in 164 BC? It's exactly this number, give or take. So the 2300 evenings and mornings are animal sacrifices that were going to be missed from the time Antiochus Epiphanes defiled the temple to the time the sacrifices were restored. Because remember, no matter what you do with this passage, the animal sacrifices have to be restored after 2300 evenings and mornings. So the animal sacrifices are stopped and they do not get restored until the 2300 mornings and evenings have passed. That's the plain text. So obviously, the Seventh-day Adventists and the Millerites are completely off the text. Why? Because we know for a fact that at the time that Daniel is given the prophecy, there are no sacrifices going on. The sacrifices started in 457 BC, in the time of King Artaxerxes of Persia. The sacrifices continued without stopping all the way up to 167 BC. The sacrifices stopped for 3 years and a half in 167 BC when there was a war between Israel and Greece until Israel defeated Greece. The sacrifices were restored in 164 BC. The sacrifices continued unabated without stopping ever again until 70 AD. So when Jesus was born, 165 years later, after the sacrifices were restored, he found a temple that was functioning. In fact, like I've already mentioned, he attended the Hanukkah ceremony, commemorating the restoration, the fulfillment of Daniel 8. So, if you're a Seventh-day Adventist, and I have some very good friends that are Seventh-day Adventists, I want you to be intellectually and spiritually honest. Daniel 9 says, after the 2300 evenings and mornings, which are evening and morning because morning sacrifice and evening sacrifice, animal sacrifices must be restored at the temple. It is not talking about heaven, because heaven has never had a day in which there were burnt offerings. Heaven does not have burnt offerings. Heaven does not offer burnt offerings to God. So heaven has never ceased to do burnt offerings, ever. When Jesus came into the world, he came and said, pray this way: our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it already is in heaven. So during the lifetime of Jesus, was the will of God being done in heaven? Yes. Was the will of God being done on earth? Not quite. So Jesus came to restore the will of God on earth as it is in heaven. So Jesus did not need to restore anything in heaven. Jesus needed to restore everything on earth. But the burnt offerings were already continuing in Jesus's ministry during Jesus's lifetime. They did not stop until 70 AD, which is the second coming. So 1844 is a fake, bogus date. There is nothing that happened in 1844 in heaven or on hell or on Mars or on earth or anywhere else. It is just a made-up date that means absolutely nothing. It has nothing to do with the second coming. It has nothing to do with the plan of God. It was just made up by disappointed people. It was made up by people who are disillusioned. Just like every time people get disillusioned by their false rapture narratives, they make up something. Harold Camping, some of you know about Harold Camping. In 1994, Harold Camping made this detailed calculation, says 1994, Jesus is coming back. Now, of course, Harold Camping knew about the dates that had been made in 1987. 87 reasons why Jesus is coming back in 1987, failed. 88 reasons why Jesus is coming back in 1988, failed. The late great planet Earth had written that Jesus would return by 1988, failed. So Harold Camping appears, he has a radio network, he was a billionaire, he says 1994, failed. He changed it a couple of times in 1994, failed. So he went back into his hole. He came back in about 2008, 2009. And he said, now I got it. Jesus is coming back on May 21st, 2011. Failed. He recalculated to October 21st, 2011. Failed. This is what happens every time. Seventh-day Adventist is a denomination founded upon a failed rapture prophecy. And so they count the second coming from 1844. Something that is totally unfounded, unbiblical, false, a lie. I am sorry, my Seventh-day Adventist friends. Your denomination is based on a lie. Now, is everything they teach a lie? No. As a matter of fact, they believe in the cross. They believe in the resurrection. They believe in the atonement. They believe in many true things. But they started to be a unique denomination based on the failed rapture prediction of 1844 by William Miller. It's all fake. Nothing happened in 1844. Daniel 8 has nothing to do with 1844. Daniel 8 has to do with the latter part of the Greek kingdom. Greek kingdom. The latter part of the Greek kingdom. The Greek kingdom was finally defeated in 164 BC at Ephesus by the Romans. So it's very interesting. Well, don't quote me on that. It might be 144. Might be 144. The dates sometimes they are all over in my mind. But somewhere after the Jews defeated the Greeks, the Romans went to war separately from the Jews and they defeated the Greeks. I believe it's somewhere between 164 and 144 BC. That's how the Rome became the prevailing empire at the time of Jesus, because they defeated the Greeks at Ephesus, not in Israel. The Jews themselves defeated the Greeks. And when they defeated the Greeks, the Romans were so happy that they sent a plaque of congratulations to the king of Israel, Jonathan, and they wrote to him, they said, "We are very happy and we applaud your victory over the Greeks, and we offer you a one-to-one alliance. We want to be your friend." And Jonathan sent an emissary and said, "We accept." So the Jews and the Romans became partners, an alliance, a United Nations alliance in 164 BC. Sometime after that, the Romans defeated the Greeks. So the Romans coming to Jerusalem in 63 BC in the face of Pompey was because they were friends of Jerusalem. They were coming to help them to resolve an internal civil strife. But the 2300 mornings, 167 BC to 164 BC. Anthony Guerisi is in Australia. He says, "I've learned something today." But don't you learn something every day in this channel? That's just the truth. I learn new things every day on this channel. This is amazing. Thanking you very kindly, Pastor Steve. Welcome. Error, my good friend, says, "I've never seen a preterist make a rapture prediction that was wrong." Oh, that is golden. We preterists always make the exact 100% prediction of the rapture, and we are never wrong. Why? Because we go by the words of Jesus Christ. Jesus said he would return before the generation passed away in 70 AD. We know that the temple was destroyed by September 8th. As a matter of fact, I don't know why I've been saying July, August. I looked it up today again. Sometimes I forget these dates. The temple in Jerusalem was destroyed in September 8th, but that is the Gregorian calendar. So it's possible that in the Jewish calendar it was in July, but in our calendar it would have been September. But anyway, the point is this: the great disappointment that we are seeing in Christians now is not new at all. This has been happening for hundreds of years. It will continue to happen for hundreds more. I wish it was not so, but it will. So if you know a Seventh-day Adventist, have them watch this. Have them see that the text in Daniel 9 has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with 1844. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Here it is. Here it is. Here is the text. It says here, if you read it from verse 11, it tells you exactly what is happening. It says, and I'm going to begin here, out of the four. So let's begin here where it says, then the goat became exceedingly great, but when he was strong, the great horn, Alexander the Great, was broken. And instead of Alexander the Great, came up four conspicuous horns. The Ptolemies, the Seleucids, Lysimachus, and it will come to me. It will come to me. Just a memory issue. Anyway, I'm growing old. So these four horns were the four generals that ruled Greece after Alexander. Out of them came a little horn. The Romans did not come out of Greece. They were a totally different thing. Out of them, so this is still Greece. Out of them came a little horn which grew exceedingly great towards the south, towards the east, and towards the glorious land. He was a Seleucid, I believe, Antiochus Epiphanes. It grew great even to the host of heaven. The host of heaven, by the way, is Israel, the priests. It grew great even over the priesthood of Jerusalem. And some of the host of heaven, which are the priests, some of the host and some of the stars, some of the 12 stars. There are 12 stars, which are the 12 stars of Jacob, 12 sons of Jacob. He threw down to the ground and trampled them, conquered them. 167 BC. It became great, even as great as the prince of hosts, even as great as the high priest, to where he went into the domain of the high priest and sacrificed a pig inside the temple. And the regular burnt offering was taken away from him, from the prince of the host. And the place of his sanctuary was overthrown, the temple in Jerusalem. And a host will be given over to it together with the regular burnt offering because of transgression. So in other words, the reason why God allowed Antiochus Epiphanes to go and sacrifice a pig inside the temple is because there was transgression in Jerusalem. God never allowed his people to be defeated if they were not sinning. So the regular burnt offering is taken away. So it will throw truth through the ground. It will act and prosper. Then I had a holy one speaking, and another one who spoke and said, how long until the vision concerning the regular burnt offering? The transgression that makes desolate, and the giving over of the sanctuary and the host to be. And then he answered, for 2,300 evenings and mornings, which is 1,150 24-hour days, then the sanctuary shall be restored to its rightful state. So the Seventh-day Adventists postulate that from the time Jesus died and ascended to heaven in 30 AD, they propose that the heavenly temple remained filthy, desolate, unoccupiable until the year 1844. So Jesus, Hebrews 9 says he entered into the most holy place. So notice this. So the Seventh-day Adventists say Jesus did not enter into the most holy place until 1844. Hebrews chapter number 9 says this. Hebrews 9 says this. Verse number 13. What does Hebrews 9 say? Did Jesus enter in 1844? Verse 13. Okay, let's begin at verse 11. But when Christ appeared in 30 AD as a high priest of the good things that have, not will, have come, then through the greater and more perfect tent, not made with hands, that is not of this creation, that's heaven, he entered once for all into the holy places. He entered into the holy places when he ascended once and for all. So Seventh Day says he did not do that until 1844. Hebrews says he did that when he ascended, before Hebrews was written. Who do you believe? Do you believe Ellen G. White, or do you believe the writer of Hebrews? Who are you going to believe? Who is a real servant of God? Who is a real truth teller? I'm going to go with Hebrews, and I'm going to reject Ellen G. White wholesale, 100%. Not by the means of blood of goats and calves, but by the means of his own blood. That's securing an eternal redemption. For if the blood of goats and bulls and the sprinkling of defiled persons with the ashes of a heifer sanctified for the purification of the flesh, how much more will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without blemish to God, purify our conscience from dead works to serve the living God. Are there any questions? So I have no specific, particular malice against Seventh-day Adventists. I just know, I just don't think, I know for a fact their doctrine is false. Just like every other futurist, their doctrine is false, but theirs is way more false because it not only contradicts what Jesus teaches about the second coming, but it adds to the scriptures and says something about 1844 that the Bible does not say. And it contradicts Daniel 8. Daniel is speaking about how the Greek Empire would impact the returned captives of Israel in Israel and their sacrificial system. And that is a matter of historical record. You can read the book of Maccabees. You can go to Google. You can use AI. You will find that this actually took place exactly as I've just described it. So I'm waiting for any questions because I'm done. I'm done. Anybody got a question? Anybody got anything to add or to contribute? And if you are a Seventh-day Adventist and you come late and you're watching this and you are disappointed, again, please, let's engage. Let's talk. Let's talk. The second coming is not in our future. I did not deal with that in this particular broadcast. I just want to show you, people who are wrong in 1844. So why are you trusting them about the near future? You need to learn the truth. So my friend Andre says, if you don't mind me asking, was the general consensus that the vision of the ram and the goat known to the Maccabee revolt at the time of the Seventh-day Adventists? Now, the question that you're asking, Anthony, is not really well versed, because the book of Daniel was well known in the time of the Maccabees, which is long before the time of Jesus. Okay. The issue of the Maccabees has always been well known in Christianity. However, after the 1600s, because if you know the history of the translations of the Bible, in the 1600s, the Great Reformation took place, right? Martin Luther and all of them. And the first King James Bible came out in 1611. So in 1611, the King James Bible of 1611 had the book of Maccabees, both books of Maccabees, in the Apocryphal section. All the Bibles before that, before 1611, all Christian Bibles, the Roman Catholic Bible always has the book of Maccabees. So all Christian Bibles used to have that section of the book of Maccabees and other writings. So therefore, up to 1611, it was common knowledge. Christians used to read the book of Maccabees. But in I believe in the 1627 or 1637 edition of King James, they removed all the apocryphal books from the Protestant Bible. So going forward into 1700, the Protestant Bibles did not have the middle section of the Bible. So you only had 66 books. And by losing all the apocryphal books, not that they removed them to where they say they should not be read, they just didn't include them. Nobody ever considered the book of Maccabees or Enoch to be the Bible. They were just considered important literature. So from the 1700s going forward, the book of Maccabees became unknown in Protestant circles. Of course, in Roman Catholic circles, nobody reads the Bible except the priests. Do you think the Roman Catholics were interested in rebutting the Seventh-day Adventists? No, they're like, hey, let them fight amongst themselves. More for us. So the key lesson here is this: you, my friend, ought to have a copy of the Maccabees. It's free online. You can get it on PDF. You can buy it on Amazon too, or you can just go and buy a King James Bible from 1611. They are there. They are available today. Search for a 1611 copy of the King James Bible. It will have all the apocryphal books. Or simply search for a Roman Catholic Bible, the Dewey Rhymes Bible. Keep it. Read the book of Esdras. Read the Wisdom of Solomon. Read those books that are in there in the middle. They are important. There is information in there that you need to know. The apostles knew them. All the Christians up to the 15th century knew them. Why don't you know them? So, to answer your question there, Anthony, they could not have used the book of Maccabees to rebut the Seventh-day Adventists because it was no longer commonly available. In any case, the regular denominations, the Baptists, the Lutherans, the Methodists, they were busy engaging in the Great Awakening. So they didn't think that the Seventh-day Adventists were worth their time at that time. Moreover, right after 1844, 1863, when the Seventh-day Adventists are formed, a new doctrine called the Rapture exploded into the Protestant and evangelical scene, starting with the Plymouth Brethren in England, John Nelson Darby. At the same time, out of this Millerite disappointment, the Jehovah's Witness exploded onto the scene, Charles Taze Russell. At the same time, there were so many denominations that sprang up around that time. So we have dispensationalism spring up, we have Seventh-day Adventists, we have the the Seventh Day, there were several Seventh-day Adventist groups. There were 3 of them actually that had different beliefs. There was what did I say? The Plymouth Brethren. Then at that same time, the Pentecostals in Azusa Street sprang up. So it was a time of great upheaval. So nobody was trying to rebut anyone. Everybody was trying to establish themselves. So that period from 1830 up to about 1906, there's a lot of fringe groups that sprang up that today are the mainstream. Is the scary stuff. Today, Pentecostal denomination is bigger probably than anyone else. 600 million. 600 million Pentecostals in the world today. 1901. It's based on a false premise altogether. Fake tongues from day one. Seventh-day Adventists, 22 million, maybe up to 30 million by now, because this report is probably from 2015. Jehovah's Witness, they have at the very least 10 million, right? Dispensational Christians, they didn't even go to different denominations. That's bigger than everybody else. That's more than 1.5 billion Christians believe in the fake rapture of John Nelson Darby. All of them are fake. All of them are wrong. All of them are in error. But none of them know that all of them are. Every one of them thinks only those guys are wrong over there. All those other guys are wrong, I'm not. Now, you see, I can say that because I used to be one of them. I used to be in the Pentecostal rapture one. But we never thought that we were wrong. We never thought that our tongues were false. John MacArthur didn't think that his rapture doctrine was false, even though he knew it was started in the 1840s by John Nelson Darby. He knew this. The Jehovah's Witness, this article that I showed here is from the Seventh-day Adventists. This article is not a critic. See here? Let me see if I can take it all the way to the top. This article is their own article. All the information I gave you is from themselves. This is from them. This is from them. If it will work. I don't know if it will work. I hope it will work. Ooh, come on. I don't know why it won't work. But anyway, doesn't matter. So anyway, it's just of the tracks. The train fell a long time ago. Now there's a comment here, and of course I'm just about to end this. Miss, I don't know if it's Miss, but Estelle is watching from Perth in Western Australia. Thanks, Steve, for your teaching ministry. And they clarify that. They say, yes, you saw that was just a repetition. Now, when the foundation is wrong, so is the structure itself. So there are many things that they teach that are right, but the structure is going to fall. If the foundations are faulty, what can the righteous do? It is sad that most are never willing to learn, even with explicit texts. Our good friend, which we were with in Montana, Pastor Joel, recently moved to Australia. Estelle, he's a great guy, and his YouTube channel is The Past Days with Pastor Joel. He's an amazing speaker. Yes, Estelle, I know you're in Perth. I don't know exactly where Joel is right now. I can't remember, but he's at least in your continent. And I'm pretty sure he's going to be spreading the word there. He's an awesome preacher. Yes, thank you, Arrow, for reminding us. At that same time, the Latter-day Saints, also based on a fringe second coming movement, was formed in 1835 by Joseph Smith, another fake prophet. Ellen G. White was a fake prophet, for sure. Joseph Smith was a fake prophet. Miller was a fake prophet. Charles Taze Russell, fake prophet. And the guys at Topeka, Kansas, with the Pentecostal movement, fake prophets. It's a sad thing to admit, But when you actually go without any bias and just look at the history and what they did and what they were saying, you are like, oh my God, how did I get mixed up with these guys? But more importantly, what do I do now that I'm mixed up with these guys? It's just like my mother used to tell me when she was a young woman, she got mixed up in the William Branham movement. William Branham was considered to be a true prophet, but everybody today, everybody knows William Branham was a totally 100% fake prophet. But he had millions of people following him, still millions of people following him even today. And many, many, many others, Benny Hinn and the like. Fake prophets, fake teachers. Now, of course, you might say, who gives you the right to call people fake? The Bible does. Because if somebody is teaching the wrong, false doctrine against the explicit text of scripture that don't need further interpretation, what else are you going to call them? If I'm saying something that is totally contrary to the scriptures, you have to call me a fake prophet, a fake teacher, even me. So it's not, there's no, you can call me a fake teacher too. There's a question always asked on what was happening between Malachi and Matthew. The claim is that God was quiet. What's your view? My view is that you need to read the apocryphal books. Now, in terms of was God quiet, what is the meaning of that statement? God was quiet. Does that mean God was not working? No, God was working, because Daniel 10 and 11 is a prophecy of all the things that would happen in that 400-year period. So was God working? Yes. Was God giving scriptures? Was God sending prophets? No. There were no prophets in the intertestamental periods. So the last prophets are Haggai and Malachi and Zechariah. And some people say Zechariah is before, but I think Zechariah is also one of the last ones. But those post-exilic prophets are the last genuine prophets to be given a word from the Lord. So if that's what you mean by was God silent, then the answer would be yes. But God was not silent, because it's just like this. Has God been silent for 2,000 years? The last time that the Bible was written is 2,000 years ago. Right? John, Revelation. Has God been silent for 2,000 years? The answer would be, of course not. Well, how has he been speaking? Through the revealed word. God speaks through his word. So therefore, the idea that God was silent in the 400 years is ludicrous. The only way God would be silent is if there is no scripture. There is no prophet. So the only time that we can say God was silent is before Genesis 1. But after Genesis 1, God speaks, let there be light. From that time onward, God's speech is always available. So God is never silent. Even now, he's not silent. But it's not these crazy things that people say. Oh, Jesus appeared to me and he looked like this. It's the word. It's the word. It is written. That's the word of God. Now, is it possible that God, speaks to certain people in, special ways? I think it is possible. I don't think God has ever stopped being who he is. And I don't think that God only ever showed visions or, gave guidance to the recorded prophets only. I think that in the New Testament church, anyway, he was speaking to many people at the same time. Joel chapter 2, pour his spirit on all flesh. But I think that is why Paul says we have to be extremely careful, extremely skeptical. Because then every Tom, Dick, and Harry will come and say, the Lord spoke to me last night. Test all things rigorously. Test it, bang it against the wall, pour acid on it, hit it with a mallet, cut it with a knife. If it withstands the test, then it is true. That's how you should deal with any prophetic word that somebody brings you. Somebody says, the Lord spoke to me. Says, okay, say it. But before you say it, disclaimer, I will test it. I will stretch it. I will burn it. I will put it under every possible test. If you are not willing for your so-called word to go through every skeptical test, don't tell it to me. Because I'm going to test it. And I'm going to use every test I can imagine. And it better stand up. If it fails even in one way, not only your word will I discount, I will discount you. So be careful of telling me the Lord told you. Because I will test it. And if I find it to be false in any way, you and your word are out of my life forever. I will never listen to you again. Whoa, yeah. I ain't going to get deceived like a buffoon. Well, then how then do I bring, if the Lord gives you a vision or a dream at night, tell him, give me a scripture, because Steve Magwo will not believe me. Steve Magwo will only believe your word. That's me. That's me. My wife, God bless her heart, I believe God shows her many things in dreams. She comes to me and she tells me things, and I can tell, whoa, that's extraordinary. But nevertheless, I tell her, I will test you. I will test it. I will test it. I will test it. I will test it. It better stand up to the word. So I usually tell her, if it's not ready for a test, if you have not prayed about it, don't tell it to me. Because I want to test it. I want to stretch it. I'm going to take it through the ringer. So I do believe that God does do extraordinary things today, even miracles. But it's not your everyday, every hour thing that people claim. Oh, I was going to Walmart and God told me to turn right. Nonsense. You said you are going to turn right. Then you are going to say the Lord told you. Everything the Lord told me. The Lord told me. Then the Lord told me to take $20 out of my pocket. Okay. Your life has no power in it. You are not doing anything extraordinary, but the Lord speaks to you more than he spoke to Paul. Really? Really? All right. Go on ahead, Ellen G. White. Go on ahead, Joshua. Go on ahead, brother so-and-so. Do your thing. But I ain't going with you. For me, I just want Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, and the Romans. Acts and 2 Corinthians, Galatians, and Ephesians. That's all I want. Just want it is written. If it is not written, go tell your story to somebody else. Because if you bring it to me, I will test it to the max. If you tell me the Lord has given me a tongue, I'll say, speak it. We'll put it through a language, AI, to find out if your tongues are an actual language on the planet Earth. AI is so sophisticated today that it knows all the languages on Earth. So if people tell you they are speaking in tongues, go record them. Test it. Bring it to AI and say, AI, can you tell me what these people are saying? What language is this? If AI cannot figure out what that language is, it's just jabbering. Ja, 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 nothing. It's not real tongues. The tongues of the Bible are actual languages spoken on earth and understood by other humans. That's the biblical standard. The rest of them, they are just, what do they call them? Mystical utterances. The Bible never promised mystical utterances. The Bible promised tongues of men, languages of foreigners. So if you can get that Roman Catholic Bible, sure, get it. Or you can just go online and download all these apocryphal books. Read them. Keep them in your library. So, gotta go sleep, man. It is late. It is 11:49. When I started this thing, I think it was like 8:30. That's an hour and 50 minutes ago. So, are you blessed? I hope so. Are you challenged? I hope so. Share this with somebody else. Tag somebody. Let them come and hear what. Even pretend you don't know me. Say, hey, listen to what this guy is saying about Seventh-day Adventists. You people, come listen. Let them listen, thinking you're on their side. Let them listen. And then we go from there. We go. God bless you. Have a good night.